Yeah, this is our May edition of our monthly Lekgotla, and this particular Lekgotla is dedicated to Business Consultants Network. So we have our guest Angelo Kehayas. I have learned to pronounce it proper, Kehayas.
Hi.
Thank you, welcome, Angelo. Thanks for joining us for our tea time, and we will
Pleasure.
have other colleagues joining us a little bit later. And I like it that we're going to talk about business consulting or the work of consulting in a much relaxed way on this Saturday. So this first hour is just for us to connect with each other. You know, the Lekgotla philosophy here at COMETSA, which we started practicing since 2017 for our members, stakeholders, friends, and supporters. It's meant to be a platform at which we tackle various topics. Angeli will be interested to know that we use the African Lekgotla methodology to engage on a conversation around any other topic. So I always say that to simplify it, just think of other famous methodologies that are used to make a large number of people to enter into conversation in a progressive way. You can think of the World Cafe, which is very common. You know, it's very much similar to that. You know, in a World Cafe methodology, where people started, you know, they're like you're sitting in a restaurant and you're sitting at various tables and you're just rotating from one table to another, with one person remaining at their table. And when the others join, and then the person will update them on the conversation that they held with the previous group. By the time you finish that rotation, you basically have had everything that each and every table has discussed. Not only that you have had everything, but you have also contributed to every table's discussion. So what we have done with this African Lekgotla methodology, over and about taking over the principles of African Lekgotla methodology, like respect, giving each other space, attending to each other, you know, collaborating, and nobody playing the role of a leader. We are all equal. So then we break into what we will call mini Lekgotla. So if we were 20 people in this conversation, we will do that, break into various sessions, have a conversation using the same philosophy there, come back and share the conversations. And at the end of that Lekgotla, and we say that His Majesty makes a ruling, or, or he endorses the decisions of his people. And in African culture, we say that there's a saying, I'll say it in my language and then I'll try to translate that. Basically, it means that the leader does not really necessarily dictate, but he guides. Yeah. But what is beautiful is that at the end of the day, he makes sure that decisions are taken. So that is the methodology we have been using. And we use this as a monthly engagement, as you have been stating earlier on during our offline chat, that if you do something new every day, a bit, you actually progressively grow. And we believe that if we jump 1 month and there's no Lekgotla, we basically lost 1 month of learning collectively. Because we believe that in our own way, every day we learn. But coming together once a month, we consolidate that learning and then we grow together. And that is what makes Lekgotla so fascinating. I mean, we also, of course, have the opportunity for guest speakers like yourself to bring new thinking into our network. Because sometimes when the network becomes too much uniform, it then becomes forward-looking, internally looking. And then you think you are progressing. Meanwhile, now you are just pleasing each other, basically. But when Angelo comes in and says, guys, did you know that we have this institute? Now look at it. Just now, the first delivery you have done for us was to share the link link to the institute. Now that expand our network. And that is really the whole idea, that there is not only coming together to hear the content, but it's like a community that comes together to check on each other, you know? And because we are a community, we are very generous with what we learn because we can trust each other. But we are also happy to have a new entrance into the community. So what we then do, the first 1 hour, as you have experienced, we arrive and we greet. And in the African tradition, greeting is very important. You don't greet me while you are running away. You literally stop and you engage in a conversation with me, you check if I'm okay, and then we can start discussing. No hurry. And so that's what we do with that first 1 hour. We want you to feel each other. We want you to share with us what is going on, what is in your world happening, and what is happening in our world. And then from there, we then continue into then welcoming the guest. And then if the guest has been alien like you were, the guest is also part of us. So now we don't want you to talk to us as a stranger. We want you to talk to us like now you've connected with George. You now know George is your next door neighbor. So I'm sure that gives you comfort.
What is interesting is what you were saying earlier is actually also a coaching philosophy. A leader as a coach doesn't actually tell you what to do. Asks you great questions and says, so what are you going to do about it? And it's very similar to the philosophy you were sharing with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. So now we are going to spend this 1 hour just to get to tell you a little bit about ourselves, and you tell us. But I also wanted to do something interesting and exciting that goes along with consulting, to say, please just think of your first encounter with consulting, the word consulting, you know, and the first encounter with consulting work. You might have been in a consulting workshop and they tell you, we've got this consultant, he's going to facilitate the session, and you didn't know what to expect. And from then onwards, you got this vocabulary, this understanding that there's a profession called consulting. Yeah, I want you to think about that, because I've got some wonderful memories here that I've had to go to my library to pick up some wonderful stuff. So I'm going to tell you my story after introducing myself, or maybe let me tell you the story. So my story is going to be based on 2 books. Okay, the first one is called Management Consulting: A Guide to the Profession. And this was produced by the International Labour Office in Geneva. Yeah, and it was the second edition that was revised and edited by a guy called Milan. I can't pronounce it. Cooper. It's like
Cooper.
Yeah,
Cooper.
Yeah, you know him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
he's world-renowned.
He's a world-renowned. Yeah. So this book, I always say to people, if you can get this book and you want to jump into consulting either as a professional work, this book is incredible. And now, the story goes further. This book was given to me by my late friend, the late George Negoda. Now, George Negoda, many people will know him. For me, he's special in the sense that when I came over to Gauteng, I was coming to study at Wits. And I had received a scholarship from Mobil Oil, and that was in 1984 when I came to Wits. And George was working for Mobil Oil at that time, responsible for their public affairs and corporate affairs, looking after communities. At that time, Mobil Oil was what we call Engine today. And they were building garages all over the country, and they were very big. Remember, they were an American company and investing massively in the Black advancement schemes. And they were sponsoring Black Management Forum. And George Negoda was one. Him and Eric Mafuna those were the founding fathers of the Black Management Forum. And he also then worked for them, and he was responsible for us at Wits as the graduate, as the recipients of Mobil Oil Scholarship. So he welcomed me at VETS officially. And the rest is history. After he welcomed us officially, I went to him and then we exchanged numbers and George became my friend. So we will study together at VETS, Watson Weiler Library. And he used to come in the evening to study there. And he used to say to me, George, I'm a son, you know, we can be majority in numbers. But when it comes to equality, we are minority. And in order to change that, my friend, that's why I'm working and I'm studying. You must take this opportunity. Meet me here every evening. Let's study. Because when we win liberation, this country is going to require us to manage it. And we can't manage it with our quantity. Majority doesn't help to run a country. It's the quality among the majority that is going to help. And then he gave me this book. Yeah. And he signed it. And George passed away 2 years ago, and may his soul rest in peace. But listen to his message to me from George Manda Negoda. This book is donated to Sam Tsima as a sign of appreciating the good work Sam is doing. I hope he will continue on this selected good and inspiring road. Signed by George on the 30th of May, 1990.
Oh, okay.
I still have this book. So that was my first encounter with consulting. And George was a consultant of note, if you know him. So that is the memory I want to share with you. And while you are...
When you turned the book, I don't know if you noticed how thick it was. It's about 1,000 pages. It's not much reading.
It is. And I use it. He has almost every topic you can think of in this book. You know, from nature and purpose of management consulting, range and scope of consulting services, the consultant-client relationship, consulting and change, consulting and culture, professionalism in consulting, consulting process, the entry, diagnosis, action planning, implementation, termination, and then consulting in various areas of management. Consulting in general management, consulting in financial management, consulting in marketing and distribution management, consulting in production management, consulting in human resource management and development.
And it goes on.
Angelo, it goes on. But just for the interest of others, consulting in small enterprise management, because somebody might pick up the area that they want to go into. Consulting in public enterprise management, consulting in computer application for management, and then managing a consulting organization. I like this one.
Yeah.
Conceptual approach to the management of consulting, the consulting organization strategy, marketing consulting services, cost and fees, assignment management, operational and financial management, structuring consulting organizations, and then developing management consultants, consulting as a career, training and developing consultants, the consulting profession in developing countries. I mean, this is beautiful. Is he still alive, Angelo?
Well, it hasn't been updated, but you must also remember that the book was a foundational book. But what you will also notice is that in that book, it refers to the ICMCI, which is very interesting. That's the international body that we belong to. And South Africa was one of the founding members. So even at that stage, the International Labour Organization actually recognized the value of professional bodies. And in fact, that is the reference guide. And even the consulting life cycle that you showed, you know, the entry, the diagnosis, the action planning, all that stuff. There's different views of it, but it's basically the same. And I'm going to talk about ISO 20700, which is the ISO standard of the middle part of the consulting, which is contracting, execution, and termination, which fits into that life cycle. And then the other thing you said that you like is the running of a professional practice. There's very few people who actually, even if they run a one-person business, was going to say a one-man business, but we've got female consultants as well. So a one-person business, you've got to understand the business side of looking for business, closing the business, contracting before you even start consulting. So there's a sales process and a marketing and a relationship building process, which I'm sure this is what the LEKGOTLA helps with. And of course, networking, understanding people's strengths, skills, where they fit into the project, all those things. So even though it's 1,000 pages, it's a worthwhile read, even if you take it over 3 months. It's a huge resource in consulting.
Unbelievable. Thank you so much. I'm glad we're connecting through that book. Now, the second book that is the last one that I want to check in with is called The 7 C's of Consulting. You know, the C series. There's the 7 C's of coaching, the 7 C's of consulting.
I know the chapter, right?
Yeah. This was published by Financial Times, Prentice Hall, Financial Times, and the guy is called Mick Cope. You know him. He has written the 7. Yeah.
I know of him.
Yeah, he has written the 7 C's of coaching. I love it. He really can make you think. You know, there's a structure in every helping profession. It's not only psychologists who follow the protocols and everything, but these 7 C's are just quite interesting. I'm just going to quickly read them, and then I'll stop there. The first C is the client. Yeah. So you need to understand the person you are working with, working for. And the second C is clarify the situation, you know, so that you don't walk into blind. You think you understood what the client wants you to do, and you're wasting so much time, and they're wondering, but what is he doing here? I'm sure you have been in situations where you wonder if consultants really know what they are doing. The third C is create, you know, creativity and creation. And the fourth C is change. And the fifth C is confirmation, confirm. And the sixth C is continue. And the seventh C is close the assignment. So yeah, those are my contacts with consulting. I am a coach, and I would like to believe that coaching, consulting, mentoring, facilitating, training, they are all related fields, but they are different. And we call them, they are helping professions. So it's very important to understand that when you take any one of these professions, you are regarded as belonging to a helping profession where the client is central. And they all have the same requirements. And I'm glad that Angelo is going to be talking about it. And thanks for introducing the Institute to us, because I think there must be a wealth of resources there. I'm Sam Zima, as is written there. I'm the founder of COMETSA. COMETSA is this year, in 1st of August, 24 years. Next year will be 25 years old, Angelo, and we will be having a big party. 1st of August, that's the date we were formed. And by the way, today, the 8th of May, is the first anniversary of COMETSA Worldwide, COMETSA Radio Worldwide. And I would like to say that it's the first anniversary of COMETSA Global Online Channels, because we have introduced all these channels into one family, our podcasts, our radio, our television network, which is the video streaming network. And so that's a big day for us. But big day is next.
Can we celebrate together? It's the 50th anniversary of the IMCSA next year.
Oh, what date?
We were established in March, April of 1972.
Please invite us, and we invite you to ours in August. Thank you so much. Great stuff. That was my checking in. I hope I've given you a bit of interest into this topic. I love this topic. I regard myself as a consultant, as a coach, as a mentor, as a facilitator, and they're all the same. And it's a big family, and we can really belong to bigger families than this with the IMCSA as well. Thank you very much. And then I will hand over to whoever is ready to also take us through their checking in.
Well, I was going to say that the number 8 is quite significant in the sense that if you go to Proverbs 8, it talks about wisdom.
Wow.
Now, Proverbs 8 is probably one of the most significant proverbs you can get.
Yeah.
Wisdom. You go out there
Wow.
and you find wisdom. Because when you have wisdom, you have everything else.
Mm.
I know people go and
Yeah.
say, I'm going to look for money. No, no, no. Look for wisdom first.
Oh,
And
yes.
everything else follows. All right.
Wow.
So that I might as well check
I'm
in.
gonna grab my Bible as while it's still fresh while you
Prophet
as you
said,
are
yeah,
talking,
sure.
George.
Sure. It's
You can be you can be taking us through your checking in. I'm gonna get my Bible and I'm gonna refer to.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it really is. So you obviously you guys can hear. I love the Bible a bit. You know, my grandmother. So my grandfather was a reverend, and in the United Methodist Church, and his wife, my grandmother, started a movement in the United Methodist Church, which today RRW has thousands of members across Zim and in other countries. But she founded it. And the story goes that she would wake up in the morning around 3 in the morning, go up to a hill and pray for the founding of that and pray for the emancipation of women. Today, that very site, it was under a tree. That very site underneath that tree, it's a shrine. They've built a shrine for her, and women from across the world will go there to celebrate emancipation and to celebrate the dedication that woman had for the causes that she believed in. So it's that's my grandma. And my father was a politician, a nationalist. So he spent years in prison, and at one stage was sentenced to death for treason. Later reduced on appeal. He was a politician through and through. But the one thing that he always said was, even despite our quest for freedom, one who doesn't prepare himself is never going to cut it in any given regime. Whether you are in this current regime or whether when you become independent, if you don't prepare yourself, you will never succeed. Because according to him, when you prepare and you get a hold of opportunity, that is what is called luck. So luck is opportunity meeting preparation. If you don't have that, you're going nowhere in a hurry. You can claim I'm black, I'm this, but if you don't work at it. And so those are people who influence me, and that's why I attend lectures and I always trying to improve, because I understand the one thing: if you stay static, you become irrelevant very, very quickly. And
Yeah.
and if it is a message that you can give to people, yesterday I was talking to Sam about SMMEs, etc. Those are the people we should be talking to. That if you stand in one place, oh, the cobwebs come in and that's the end of you. But if you keep moving, you're getting better and better and better. Okay, so I'm George Mtenda Zamera, and I'm a founder at Vula Unlock Consulting. I'm into coaching. I do a bit of other consulting, but my love and passion is coaching. I'm based in Central, and my neighbor there, I'm going to send him a cup of coffee in a moment or two.
You can walk over here. It's not far.
Now that the rain has ceased a little bit. And I was born in Zim, in a place called Mutare. That's the eastern part
I've been
Zim.
there. I've been to
You've
your
been
hometown.
Mutare. Where
Yes.
I was born is the site where the Africa University is today.
Okay.
Africa University, that's the hospital is a stone's throw away. That's where I was born. And my mom was a school teacher. She, literally, her sisters and her brothers, it's a teaching background. So it was reading, doing charts. I did charts when I was in grade 5. I would sit there and help her with church. Not very well, I must admit, but I was at it. I was at it. And she always did the same thing: learn, go, learn. Don't want to be the brightest in the class. Just learn. And so I hear discussions around kids talking today. Oh, I'm bright. I've got high IQ. That's great if you have it. But if it must start with the desire to do well. It doesn't matter your IQ. If you have a desire to do well and you keep at it, you will do well. And so I like talking to people who feel kind of like marginalized because they think, oh, I'm not as bright as that guy. We have all the same opportunity. The difference is one wants it more than the other. And the one who wants it more gets it. Simple. Anyway, so that was both day. I was educated there. I ended up doing law because I wanted to defend a father who was always in prison. I spent 10 years in practice. I left, joined as a legal advisor, went and joined a listed company and did so many things. I even did marketing. I always tell them I did marketing, I did sales, I did compliance, I did corporate affairs, I did the legals, I did mergers, acquisitions. But all those things, every time you get a challenge that you've never done before, your heart skips. You are afraid. But always get over. If you say to yourself, I'm going to get over this fear and do it, you will do it. So all the stuff that I did, I never learned mergers and acquisitions at university, but I did mergers and acquisitions because I believed I could do it. So there's a lady called Carol Dweck. I'm sure you guys know Carol Dweck, who wrote who started this concept of growth mindset.
What is the name, George?
Carol, Carol, Carol Dweck is Dweck. She was a professor at Harvard or whatever, one of those big. Carol Dweck. She started the concept of growth mindset. And she says, yes, some people are born with some talent, but the starting point is if you believe you can do it and work at it, you will do it. And so you will find, I'm an avid soccer follower, teams with average players doing very well. And you wonder, why are they doing very well? It's because the coach has managed to get them to believe. And they will beat much more talented people any day because they believe they can do it. And growth mindset is that says, every day I can improve myself. I don't have to be born smart, but I can do it. As I say, I like talking to this kind of marginalized people because they always, oh, but I don't have. No, you have it. Just focus and want to be better every day. As you say, if you 0.001 every day, 0.0, you will get better. It goes without saying. But if you stand still, you regress. And then to my friend Tendani, I have a side of me that resonates with Tendani. And we started a festival in 1999. It became one of Africa's biggest festivals, called Haifa, Harare International Festival of the Arts. If you look for Haifa, it ended up, it would have artists from all over the world. But it started as a small group of people who wanted to bring a festival to the city of Harare. And it's a 6-day festival, and it encompasses all the arts, including sculpture, dance, music, the whole works. And it's really one of the best things that I've ever been involved in. But the lesson there was, if you start small and have a desire to do better, you will do better. And that's about it. I absolutely love this LEKGOTLA, where we come and we discuss and get to understand each other, because it gives me an opportunity to learn. I always say to them, I just want to come and learn. Every day, a little bit, 0.0 something, but I know in the end I'll get better. And I can help somebody in the process. I'm a coach. I love coaching executives. My wife is a life coach, so she loves coaching, she's passion for women and loves talking to women, helping them get better. And yeah, that's us. That's me. I'll always say us
Right.
because she's a part of me.
Thank you, George, for the Carol Dweck. I've just Googled it and I can see, yeah, I'm going
Amazing.
to, it's amazing stuff that I'm seeing here. Thank you for that. Dweck is written W-D-W-E-C-K. So I got that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. She's a professor at Stanford. I'm a Stanford psychologist. Good stuff. Thank you very much, George. Yeah. Who wants to go next?
Okay, can I just say one more thing? I said
Yes.
to Sam yesterday that the most boring person in the room is the one who wants to talk about himself throughout. But the reason why we talk about ourselves in this setup is because Sam says everyone must introduce themselves. But when you go to a party or to a function, ask other people about them questions. Don't talk about yourself like we do now. But we have to do it for this platform.
Yeah. And I think, George, you need to give the colleagues the context of our discussion. I said to George that as consultants and as coaches, we have a huge responsibility to affirm others. Because what I'm picking up in the society is that we are a society that is moved away from being together, and we no longer pat each other on the back. And what you see happening on the social media platforms, you can see by observing that people are really longing to be affirmed. And we are the society that doesn't celebrate each other. And I think that is very, 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 very important for us to take note, because for us to grow, we need feedback. And when people don't volunteer feedback, you sometimes feel like you are working hard, you are doing so much, and you are not being recognized. And recognition is a human desire by nature. So I was saying to George that if we don't re-sensitize the society to start going back to the old practice of acknowledging, appreciating, recognizing, and praising people for doing good, you will start meeting people in the street. We'll go crazy because we have so much to share and nobody's interested. So coaches are very important because we hold a mirror and then people look at themselves through the mirror. So that was the context of our discussion.
So I just want to add one thing, which is slightly off center, but very true. There's been a trend lately for people to start inventing names for their kids. But the old practice was that when you gave a child a name, it was a prophetic statement about the person's future. And by using the name, you were affirming what they were going to become. So, like, for example, Michael here is the same name as my son. And Michael is a very powerful name. And each name has got a meaning. And that's why we should always know what our name means. Because people are talking over it all the time. And it's affirming who we are. So it just ties into what you said. But I thought it's very interesting insight, because especially in the Afrikaans community, they're coming up with these names I can't even spell anymore, because they're changing the standard spelling into something weird. And then when you misspell it, they get upset with you. But where are you going to know how to spell it, because it's never been used before? And then what does it mean? Nothing. That's the sad thing. So now you're affirming nothing over someone all the time when you talk.
Yeah. Wow. Great stuff. So yeah, Sekha, when you came in, we were saying that share with us, when did you come into contact with the concept of consulting? Either your company sent you to a workshop facilitated by consultants, or they brought consultants into the company to say, Sekha, you are the one that you will provide the information for the consultants, or you read about it in a book or at school, but it's a big weight. But when did you come into contact? Before our guest speakers start giving us some insights into it. So that is where we are, including your introduction as George did.
Okay, that's fine. I am Sekhalimeti Pajani. I'm from Limpopo. I'm from a township, Lubakhomu. My name generally is a clan name. I'm named after my great-grandmother and directly from my aunt. So in literal terms, if you were to pronounce it and say Sekhalimeki, it's basically someone that reprimands. And I think somehow it resonates with me. I'm the disciplinarian in the family, apparently.
Carry the whip.
Yeah. So yeah, my nieces love me to bits, but they know when they go south, they're gonna get it. So from that point, maybe the name resonates very well with it. And yeah, so the concept of consulting, I was a consultant myself. So I did my articles with Deloitte. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. So the article route is a consulting process. So I did articles for about 3 years. Then after I joined the private sector and I've been an accountant, then I'm now a finance manager at Masmat. So yeah, so in essence, before when I had to look at the profession itself, I never per se saw myself as a consultant. I saw myself as a gatekeeper. But when you look at it, like popularly, people will see consulting mainly as, the McKinseys, the who are the other big
Well,
one, the
Deloitte,
Accentures. Yeah, those that provide more strategic support to management and any other type of services that's to reaffirm the business that they're on the right track, whether it's strategy implementation or execution thereof. But in essence, auditing, it is a consulting because you get into the company, look at their books and records, check what they're doing and give them a green light or any process of improvement and say, focus this way and you will see governance and better presentation of your financial records. So basically, that's how I understand consulting.
Wow. Thank you, Sikha.
And PwC are also in there. Hey?
I know.
I couldn't resist that one.
I don't want to comment much because it's the profession. I guess as you with the big four auditing firms, a lot will come out. Not that there's nothing wrong, but because of the magnitude and their client profile, so any irregularity or a miss that was picked up, it will be blown out of proportion. But also, there's the other concept with an audit, it's not an absolute assurance. I don't go in there and look at every single transaction that happened in the entire year. So if out of my sample, what I looked at was good, it doesn't mean there's irregularities. There's irregularities that exist. They might be, but I couldn't pick them up. So it's the nature of the engagement. So with everything coming, and also remember it's human nature. By human nature, someone will be greedy. It's all about ethics. So if the management ethics is not on par, they are bound to do wrong things, and you will never pick it up if they come across as being ethical. So it's more the hidden stuff than the profession itself.
Yeah.
In defense.
No, I just couldn't resist having a go, but I do understand.
Yes. Mr. Mulava and Tandani.
Okay, I'll go first.
Yes, Tandani.
Yes, yes, my name is Tendani Mnonoka. I live in Limpopo province in a village called Madombija. It's one of the big villages on the western side of Makado. And yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. Started some couple of years back. Where I started with a company called Bench Medical Solution that I offer consulting services for medical professionals. Basically, just getting them understanding that medical doctors understand human being, how you are, how you get a headache, and how to get it away, but they didn't know anything else in terms of running and managing their practices, their medical practices, and all that. So I to offer them that service. When I started, when you introduce yourself, because they were sales reps who were selling medical equipment, they will always say to me, "No, you are a sales rep." I said, "No, I'm not a sales rep. I'm a consultant. I'm not selling a product, but I'm offering a service." So that's when I started doing consulting services for them, and later on, with my passion of arts and culture, I started doing cultural events, cultural tourism ventures as well with different cultural organizations, NPOs, and artists as well, individuals, different individuals in housing. That was before I moved back to back home. So yeah, now I'm part of COMETSA family and DJ radio broadcasters. I've got a show that's called Tourism, Hospitality, Agriculture. I also co-host the sports development show, the Sunday night sports development show. So yeah, that's where I am. And yeah, my name, the meaning of my name, it's just basically a situation kind of name. My dad was kind of affirming the family, my mom's family, to say, no, they must just, accept that this is my wife, accept that I'm marrying this girl, and yeah, he's not changing his mind. So yeah, that's how I was keeping the name. Yeah, thank you.
And Tendani, I assume that as when you help the artists to get funding and get opportunities overseas, I mean that's consulting work in a certain way.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes.
They have trust in you that you will handhold them through all the stages of getting what they are asking for.
Yes, yeah, that is consulting in a way, because you are dealing with a group of people who have an idea of what they want, but they don't know how to present it, or they don't know which step to take forward, which doors to knock. And when I come in with those kind of solutions to, as to say to them, to say this is the way to go.
Good. Mr. Malava.
Double M.
Yes, yes. Yes, hi everyone. My name is Michael Malava. As you all are aware that Michael is an archangel, according to the Bible, per se. I'm the production manager at COMETSA Global Online Channels, together with Sam Zima, but also helping with the commercial administrative stuff. My first interaction with consultation, I think it was at the where I accompanied Sam to the mines, not in the form of a bodyguard, but in the form of just observing at the background what's happening actually when Sam is going to become a chairperson of this kind of group whereby needs to manage the dynamics and all the fights. So those were my first interaction, and it wasn't well, of course, due to mind farms and people engage with one another. It looked like they wanna start something that is up, gonna fight. One could say that. So those were my interaction with the first interaction with consultation, I think.
Great. So that's the checking in. So Angelo, I mean, I think I will do disservice if I try to introduce you. I'm going to ask you to start by sharing with us your journey and up to where you are now, and of course then tackle the topic as we invited you, and maybe you will reflect on what we have been telling you so far, that we brought some insights and help you to refocus your presentation. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the privilege of addressing other like-minded people. My journey is a very interesting one. I started off studying mathematics and theoretical physics, so I always call myself a rocket scientist, just for the fun of it, to get people's attention. I never really applied that thinking, I just applied the logic. So my degree was effectively an education and not a foundation for anything else. But I went straight into computers in my early years, after having spent 2 years in the military, wasting my time. But at least in the military, I had an office job which was looking after electronic materials. So I learned logistics, supply chain, and all those things which I've used since. And also NATO codification and numbering and so on. So it wasn't a total waste of time. And then I went into computers, and we set up the first South African digital network, the very first in the world of its type, which was a real breakthrough. It became DigiNet. It was called SAPONet at the time. So after that, I started my own companies, quite a few of them, one of them quite a big one in distribution of home computers and electronic goods and so on. That went very well. Then I went into, I sold that business. Then I went into networking and helping people connect their companies. And then I got bored with that. So I joined this company that was mentioned before. It's called Deloitte. As a senior consultant. And I then found, to my disappointment, that what I thought consultants were wasn't quite what they were doing. Or what I thought consultants should be was not quite what they were doing. So we had senior people who were chasing money and not results. And that's one of my core focuses in training, is that the client value supersedes everything. And whatever you think you are, no matter how clever you think you are, and I just want to mention things about cleverness. I do training in personality as well. And one of my statements is, the funny thing is that people with high IQs are not always that successful for a number of reasons. One is I think everybody else might be a bit stupid. The second is they don't develop their people skills. And the third is that they are so focused on what they're doing that they don't interact with the world. That doesn't include everybody, but you can just take Elon Musk as an example. He's a famous, wealthy, supposedly successful person who's got some serious psychological challenges. That's just what I found at Deloitte. Then I joined a host of companies, Transnet and Rail Commuter Corporation, which is now PRASA. And in those days, they actually used to run pretty well. Unfortunately, they were dismantled over time. When I left there, I joined IBM as head of consulting, and then Unisys as head of consulting. And then I said, I've had enough of international companies and their games. So I went back into consulting for myself, and spent probably about 8 years doing that. And then one of my clients asked me to do a massive audit for them. And then they offered me the job I was auditing on. And I said, no, sorry, I can't do it, because it looks like I'm the executioner. So I said, if you want me, you go out to the public and you do a proper search. And if I'm the right person, I'll get the job. So I joined the biggest pension fund as CIO and spent 2 years there having quite a lot of challenges and fun. And then I went back into my own consulting since then, and that was 95. Sorry, that was 2005. And I've been working as a consultant, coach, and facilitator trainer since then. But what is very important is that since 1989, I have been involved in the Institute in one way or another, either as chair or international delegate or as CEO. Currently, I run the Institute out of my office because, as you know, voluntary institutes don't make a lot of money. So we have to cut the costs as much as we can. But that in a nutshell is my history. But what I really want to talk about today is much more than that. I want to talk about what difference consulting and coaching can make. I want to talk about the experiences of the big firms. Some people didn't want to mention names of firms. Somebody mentioned McKinsey. The big firms, unfortunately, have stained themselves. With the exception of Accenture, which is one of our corporate members, we haven't found anything in Accenture that has even come close to a scandal. But just about every single firm that we've looked at has done something unethical on a big scale, despite their statements of ethics and so on. So I say, if you want to be ethical, it's got to be in your value system first and foremost, not something you say and put on the wall. And that is true of strategy, it's true of values, it's true of everything. Putting a poster on the wall doesn't make it true. So I don't know if we're into the actual presentation now. I've given you a bit of a background of myself. I see this system has got the ability to share. It might make it easier if I share. Okay, yeah. If I share presentations and talk to, I'm not going to go through all of them. So I have to bring, this is different to, let me bring the...
There's a share button there at the bottom.
Yes, so what I want to do is I want to open up something and then see if I go back to share, because it actually only has share screen. So let's just see here, share screen and window share. Can you see that?
Yeah.
The Institute of Management Consultants.
Yeah,
we
can see that, yes.
Right, so I'm going to go into full screen mode.
Hallelujah.
Good.
Right, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about the professional body, and the important thing here is what do we do and what do we stand for? So at the top left of the block is something called CMC Global. And in fact, this is wrong. I'll come to it now. This is the body we founded that represents about 50 countries worldwide. And the IMCSA was a founding member, one of 10. And we have the IMCSA, which is now the Institute of Certified Management Consultants, Master Coaches, and as of last week, Business Rescue Practitioners as well. So we have quite a broad range. And in each of these areas, we are in a world-class space. So in Certified Management Consultant, that is reciprocal in 50 countries. So it is recognized worldwide. It has a very high standard, which I won't go into a lot of detail, but I will mention it again when I talk about the 4 quadrant of professionalism in consulting. The business rescue practitioners will have to eventually become CMCs, but they will have to be members as a minimum, member consultants. And then they'll have to comply with the CIPC requirements to become rescue practitioners. Otherwise, they'll have to work under supervision. So this is actually cmcglobal.org, which I haven't changed. And in fact, when I was looking for the website the other day, I realized that the links are all broken. The website is not up. It's a holding space, but it's meant to be the equivalent of the ICMC IM coaching. So what we stand for is a concept called coach consultant, which is what Sam was talking about. Where is the dividing line? Maybe I'll try and help you with that when we get to the competency framework. And also, I also want to talk about whether, if you are a financial person, are you a consultant, and when are you a consultant? Because that was mentioned as well. And I think a lot of people say, well, when am I a consultant and when am I a practitioner? But I'll try and answer that. Right. So I've mentioned the certification, and the certification enables you to have a reciprocal arrangement with all the countries. There's currently 47 because 3 fell off due to cost constraints. It is a certified mark of excellence. It is standardized in a code of conduct and a standard which is mind-boggling. And also, I will talk about the 20,700 standard, which is a standard of quality delivery. So these are some statistics. We represent nearly 70,000 consultants worldwide. It's not a lot in the bigger picture, I can tell you. But then you've also got to ask yourself, how many of the consultants that you know out of 100 are actually people you can trust and give work to and get a result? So CMC Global, which is the coaching side, was established as a preferred alternative, a professional alternative to other fairly restrictive and sort of inward-looking coaching certifications. And I talk about things like ICF, where what they say goes. You have to do your CPD through them. They will not allow you to consult. They'll tell you not to.
Can I just ask something, Angelo?
Yeah,
Are
sure.
you at liberty to share your presentation with us later? Or shall I feverishly take notes?
This presentation you can have with pleasure.
Thank you. Then I don't have to focus on note taking. All right.
So the idea here was based on the concept of coach consulting, which is that when I show you the competency framework, I think it'll all come together. We did a very comprehensive comparison between the competencies of coaches and consultants of 6 international and 1 local body in coaching and mentoring. And we found an incredible overlap, and I'll prove it to you, but we actually have the proof of the research. So when we look at coaching as we see it, it includes business, executive, and leadership coaching. So we're focusing on the improvement of business people's lives, from a 1-person entrepreneur right through to a corporate executive. And the terms we are using are globally recognized and inclusive of the frameworks that we showed. So we actually created a superset of the competencies. And when you see the framework, you'll see what I mean. I personally own the brand, and I established it with a global vision. And anybody who is prepared to help me with that is welcome to talk to me. But we promote that coach consultant concept. So what happened is we developed this some 20 years ago. We interviewed a lot of CEOs about the existing, the existing frameworks of coaching. And we asked the CEO, if you ask me a question, would I answer with another question? And would you be happy? And he says, all of them said no. They said, it's okay to ask good questions, but if I want advice, I want advice. So we came up with a concept of roles or hats that people change. And in fact, Sam was already mentioning that, because he says he's a coach, consultant, and a mentor. Okay, so according to the coaching profession, you cannot be a coach and a consultant because they use effectively opposite techniques, but I'll get to that. And our approach has now clearly differentiated us from the restrictive either-or designations. And just for the record, both designations are professionally recognized by SEQA. Right. So as a professional body, as I mentioned, we are, that's wrong, it's 48 years, not 58 years. I must actually fix it. I'm sure I fixed it somewhere else, but I didn't get to doing this one. Founding member of the IMCSA in 1987, so that's also quite a while ago. We've past our 30th anniversary as an international body. I personally have been active in African initiatives from Algeria to Nigeria to Zimbabwe, Botswana, Tanzania, now Kenya, Ghana as well. So I have a passion for this, and people invite me to talk at their forums. I'm talking at the Kenyan forum on the 17th. It's also open to invitation. It's not chargeable. So we are pushing the ICMCI to allow us to create an SADC initiative for the Anglophone countries in Africa, because the official language of the ICMCI is actually English. So we have developed a unique competency framework, which I'll show you, which is a superset of the ICMCI one, and we are SACWA recognized. So if we look at our mission, because we've already spoken about the certifying part, it's to enhance the professions, and that now includes BRP, business rescue practitioners, for the entire target audience. And that's not just professionals, it's the clients as well, and the people who talk about the clients like CEDA, CIFA, IDC, etc., and also the funders. Because, you know, the more credible an individual and a profession is, the more likely you are to attract funding. Right, so what we do, we actually look at the entire society. We encourage achievement of standards and rigorous attending to ethics and professionalism. And we also are constantly maintaining contact with local, regional, national, international bodies. And just for the record, the ICMCI is an NGO at the United Nations. And it's also a partner of the ISO body worldwide. That's how the 20,700 practice came to come about. And it's now South African standard as well. So what do? We maintain a code of ethics, and that includes disciplinary code. That means if a client complains about a consultant, and we don't assume the client is right, we actually facilitate an interaction, and then we moderate the interaction, and then we act as mediators. We set the standards, we certify, we educate and train. I can spend a lot of time on this, but we have set up in my company, which is a registered practice and a learner management system for training consultants and coaches, and it's starting to get some nice traction. We also have to maintain the National Learner Records database for SACWA of our members. We do public relations, social activities, social media, and then we've got a very nice knowledge base which we give to our members for free called thoughtleader.info. Right, so what kind of members do we get? So when I get to the competency framework, you'll start understanding where we start looking for competencies. So we attract membership from anywhere. We don't distinguish between background, gender, anything else, but we don't sacrifice the standards, because we believe that in South Africa, at some stages and in some places, we have sacrificed standards to get numbers. And we don't think that that is a long-term benefit for our country. So we have various levels: associate member, certified member, and fellow. Fellowship is awarded to those people who serve the industry, as opposed to be a member for 200 years, which is what some other people do. I don't think a long tenure in a professional body is something to boast about. It's much better to say, I served the industry for 5 years and I served my fellows. So that's what fellowship is about. So as we become global, and Sam asked me to talk about competition in Africa with the world players, and I'll come back to that. I've got a list of things I want to talk about. So we're open to everybody. We are the only internationally recognized body in consulting, specifically in South Africa, and you can only have one per country. We have been very involved in setting standards internationally, and I was the chair of the standards body that set up the first competency framework in 2000. We've also assisted other African countries with their startups. And who do we talk to? We talk to individual professionals, coaching, consulting, rescue practitioners, training providers, universities, and people who use us. That's the clients. So we are now in the final stages of an MOU with Northwest University, and we have Gibbs as a training provider for coaching specifically. Right, strategic partners. I'm not going to go into this, but just to highlight the fact that Accenture is one of the large practices that is one of our registered practices with 1,400 members. They don't obviously all pay membership fees, but Accenture pays a fee a year to be a practice, and it gets some serious benefits from it in terms of their skills development levy. So what does it take to become a professional member? It's someone who actually believes that they want to behave professionally. If they want to get certified, then it's an independent process to look at the character, experience, qualifications, competence, independence, and basically the ability to produce a portfolio of evidence that means something. I'm not going to go into this here, but what we look at in order to bring someone in as a certified management consultant or a master coach is we look at the business areas, the PESTEL, which is the environmental areas. We do a professional objective assessment. We look at references, and we also validate externally. So same thing for the coach. What do we call a competency? A competency, and I looked this up when I first did this in 1999. The best definition I could come up with a competence is a combination of knowledge, skill, and attitude based on experience. Okay, so you think about that. What does a university give you? It normally transfers knowledge and they test some skill, but they don't test the application of this. Okay. So this is where I think we start getting, I don't want to go through this whole thing because it's quite intense. So what I do want to point out is that when we mapped coaching and consulting, this is what we came up with. You need to understand how business operates. You need to know the context you are in. South Africa, Africa, the world. You have to know how to run, even as a one-person business, you need to know how to run a consulting or a professional practice correctly and not fail, so that you can actually charge the right fees, produce proposals, market, do all those kind of things. And then we've got the broad area of consulting, which if you look at what Sam put up there, the ILO Handbook of Consulting, that's actually what covers this. All right, so we look at the entire consulting competence. And I must focus on the consulting process and practice as the core that you need to understand. How do you consult and what is the life cycle? And then there's all sorts of other things. And change management was also mentioned in the Kuber book. Every consultant needs to bring about change in the client. So change management is inherent in consulting. Otherwise, you're making no difference. And then we get to, I think what will address the, when people say I'm a financial consultant, they fall into one of these categories. So you can be a generalist or a specialist. A specialist would be someone who, let's take finance, who is a financial consultant or an IT consultant, etc. Or a person who is an industry specialist, manufacturing, mining, public service, etc. Then there's this here, which only the South African model has got these distinctions. How big is your client? And here we start talking about entrepreneurs. And when we start engaging with the government, CEDA and all the others, they're very much focused on this sector over here. And everything they do is focused on here, but they tend to think about small people as if they're never going to get bigger. All right, so that's something that we're working very hard on, and I'll show you the one slide. Sorry, someone's got quite a lot of noise in the background. I don't know if you're all hearing it. If you can just mute your microphone. Right, and then this year we built because we started engaging with the Department of Small Business Development, and they were basically going off at a tangent, and we said, you need to know who you're talking to. Are you looking at someone with an idea who needs money? Have they, in startup mode, are they established? Are they growing? And are they starting to get into a medium-sized business which is running effectively without a day-to-day intervention by the owner? And then here, this is, to me, what really distinguishes a person who knows what they're doing versus a person who does it well. And that's the professional competence. And we spoke about ethics and integrity based on values, beliefs, attitudes, modeling the behavior. And then this here is what really distinguishes us from all the other competency frameworks worldwide. And that is the ability to know when you're performing coaching, mentoring, consulting, when you're actually implementing those kind of things. And let's just take two of them. Coaching and consulting are polar opposites. The one actually says, I'm going to show you and give you the skills to help yourself. And yeah, I'm going to give you my skills and I'm going to help you achieve your objectives at a very, very simplistic level. And then there's the personal and interpersonal competencies, which is one of my passion areas, which is how to become better at dealing with people. Right. So we built these 3 extra arrows for the business advisory services discussion to show the difference between a generalist, a niche specialist. Sorry, a person who's making a lot of noise, please mute your microphone. I'm sure it's disturbing the other people. Right. And then there's a whole series of activities around incubators and accelerators. And in fact, there was a failure. You might have heard of Sabtia. It got funded to the tune of R1 million. They had all sorts of get-togethers, and then they failed on the basis of governance and also not doing anything except having arguments. So they've re-established that, and again, with a lot of money. So we said an incubator really looks at the supporting the entrepreneur, the small business, through from concept through to probably not autopilot, but definitely growth. So from here to there to there to growth. So I hope that gives you an idea of what it takes to be a consultant. And if you don't have all these competencies, don't worry, because there's very little chance that you can have all these specialist competencies in one consultant. But you should have all these competencies in a consultant, and you should have these competencies in a consultant. Then the rest becomes, what do you specialize in? So let's look at adding coaching to that. We've now said that a coach, with the exception of a consulting competence, should have all these competencies here, plus these. And let's look at the ICF, for example, or the IAC. The IAC only focus on this part of coaching. So what they actually say is you need to be able to coach someone well, and that's all we're going to measure. What we say is that's not enough. You need to understand the client. You need to understand business, because we talk about business, executive, and leadership coaching. You need to have specific tools, philosophies, which is that, and you need to have a process and a specific practice that you follow. So you will see that some people will train you in the integral model, coach you, coaching on the axis, etc. At some stage, even the simple grow model, at some stage, you're going to have to follow some process to coach. Otherwise, you're actually just going to be having conversations. Right, so that is a nutshell. I'm not going to go through these things here. Maybe a little bit of marketing. Why would you join a professional body? Because the clients like it. You can deal with suppliers as a group. You can deal with other bodies as a group. You can deal with government as a group. You have, by joining this particular body, you have the coach consultant framework as an offering. So we have 2 different certifications, and we have the joint certification and SACWA recognition. Right, so really what we need is the commitment to grow a professional body. So that's the first presentation. And I think what I'm going to do here is, because it's halfway, I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions here. And then I'm going to go on and talk about some of the other things that Sam asked me to address.
Thank you very much, Angelo. Very insightful. It's always surprising me that there's so many organizations that you think you know of all of them, but every day you come across organizations that exist in this part of the world. And I mean, you've been here for how many years? It's 48 years in the world, I mean to say, not necessarily in South Africa alone. So that's quite amazing. So, but you're very much strong in the consulting space, right?
As a body, I would say we don't represent a very large proportion of people for 2 reasons that we've identified. The one is that some people can't afford the membership fees, which are not that high. In fact, in comparison with some of the wealthier countries, we charge 1/3 of what they charge for the same service, and it's the same service. But the other one is that people say, I don't need professional designations, so I'll just do my own thing. It's not a regulated profession. That'll become clear in my next presentation, where I show you the different aspects of professionalization. And then we'll get into the generic areas you asked me to get into. And I think the 2 presentations together with a general discussion will actually bring everything together for you.
Wonderful. And you said that you went at the SAQA process of being recognized as a professional body in South Africa.
Yes, we have been recognized for probably 6 years now. And we have just been recognized by CIPSI as a Business Rescue Practitioner Institute. We got that paper last week. That was a big breakthrough because it was so easy based on our submission that we couldn't believe it. It was basically submission on a Friday. There was a public holiday, and we got the OK on the Wednesday. So that was a great move. And that because South Africa has got so many distressed companies being, to use the word, raped by unethical rescue practitioners, and basically just dismantling the businesses as opposed to helping them recover. We don't like that. We're standing for pure rescue, which is let's get them back on their feet and not take what we can out of the system and keep charging money.
Yeah, and last one from my side. Is your organization interested in what is commonly a problem in South Africa now when it comes to ethics? You know, issue of ethics, compliance, governance is something that you concern yourself with?
Absolutely. First of all, starting with the process, we want references from clients to say that you are ethical, competent, and you achieved the results that you were set out to do in the assignment. We want a record of your assignments. That's just the starting point. Then you go through we're talking certification now. Then you go through the provision of a portfolio of evidence, which is bench reviewed, and then you go through an interview as well. So by the time we finished, we've done social media checks. We've gotten to know you quite well, and we know what you're capable of. But that's just the entry level. We then have a disciplinary code, which actually says if anybody complains, and it's on the website, so you can actually go and click on there, fill in the form, send it to the executive, and then we set up the mediation process. So we're very concerned about ethics, and we've been quite vocal about the big firms taking money and bribes and paying bribes and you name it in the industry. And in fact, we've got quite a lot of reads on those comments. And in fact, we also commented on the Auditor General's findings about that consultants are generally costing the government too much. We actually told the Auditor General, I actually spoke to Tsakani, she was the deputy at the time, she's now the Auditor General, very capable lady. She actually went on one of my training courses on how to procure, monitor, and evaluate consultants. But what I emphasized was you cannot compare two consultants on the basis of price. You have to compare them on the basis of what they can do and what you want and how experienced they are. And we actually emphasize the fact that we do discipline and we can remove members if they don't comply with our code of ethics.
I have more questions, but I will leave that for later.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Are you going to still continue sharing, or you?
No, what I was hoping is that I would have questions based on what I've just shown, not just from you, Sam. If anybody else.
Yeah, no, I was saying that the screen. Do you want to stop sharing, or?
No, I think I have stopped sharing, haven't I?
No.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can just bring it back to normal, like.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I feel like Sam has raised majority of the questions and on the presentation, because what stood out to me is that you don't focus on more how long you've been in the profession, but it's about servitude. So how well have you served your profession? So, and you touch on the issues of ethics and values, and that's what. But touching on that, when you talk about ethics and values, right? Like you say, a company can have ethics and values. It's more the individual. But when you discover that is the individual that's unethical and has poorest values, how do you go about advising companies that I actually feel your management is the root cause of all your problems, and how to move forward with that?
Okay, that's a very good question, and you're absolutely right. You do not get unethical companies, you get unethical people running companies, with the result that you are breaking the system. So if a member applies, I haven't even mentioned it, they can apply as a practice. And we're trying to encourage the big firms to become practices of the IMC so that we can actually discipline them and pull people out. And the public asks for people to be removed, like we have with SICA, because a lot of them overlap with audit firms as well, with some exceptions like Accenture and maybe Bain, because Bain is not an audit firm. So what we want to do is we want to get all the big practices into the fold as they were originally 40 years ago, and make sure that their CEO signs the code of conduct and holds him or herself accountable for the actions of the firm. And then we actually go against the CEO as well. It's actually the same as corporate governance, where no matter who you give a job to, you're still accountable as the most senior person, King 4 principle. So there's many ways we can do this, but the more firms we get on board and more support from government to say, you have to be part of this professional body and submit to the disciplinary code, the better off the industry will be.
I'm not sure I heard correctly about ongoing training for your members.
Okay, that's CPD. Well, we call it CPD, Continuing Professional Development. Okay, so when we set up a professional body, and of course, because of the international connections, we have to have a standard which covers the entry-level process, the interview process, the continuing professional development, the recertification of individuals over a period of time, making sure that they continue to do the job, they continue in the practice. CPD is one of the things they have to submit on a triannual basis, 100 CPD hours. And what is happening right now, which is a real pain to us because it costs time, is SACWA is now asking, I don't know if you know, any of you know, but SACWA had to retrench half its staff because the government pulled its funding and gave it to SAA. So I don't know what's more important, flying an airline badly or the education authority that was doing its job reasonably well. So they've lost 88 of, I think it was 169 staff members, which is disgraceful. But now we are funding SACWA. So we pay, depending on the size of the organization, we pay money into SACWA. And now SACWA is reversing the roles and saying to the professional bodies, form a task team, which we have done, and please tell us what a code of conduct should look like, what CPD principles we should apply, what are the disciplinary practices. So they're all being brought in alignment so that SACWA can actually use one, let's say, one size fits all approach to assessing you every time, because SACWA also assesses. But unfortunately, SACWA do 3-year cycles plus a midterm cycle. So it's really heavy work for the professional body. But CPD is definitely a must. And the advantage of that is we've taken the view not to burden our members with only CPD that we approve. So, for example, we allow people to do self-study, but they have to do a reflection report on it. We allow people to write articles, and then if they submit the article, we give them credit for it. We allow them to give programs and develop programs in line with the business. And then we also split, as per the competency framework, we split the points between the specialism, the generalism, and the general environment, which is PESTEL. So we give them a lot of flexibility. So, for example, an accountant can do a certain number of, let's say, SICA hours and use them as credits to our CPD. Because other bodies say, no, SICA, we don't recognize that CPD. You've got to do more CPD for us. So we've got a very flexible approach, but it's working for us, and it helps our members.
Out of interest, in the African countries, what countries are you in?
Okay, so we've got Nigeria, and Zimbabwe. Algeria seems to have fallen off, even though I flew to Algeria to help them set things up and so on. I also flew to Tanzania to train consultants, but they don't have money. I'm dealing with Kenya, and they're complaining that ICMCI fees are quite high. I'm engaged with a Ghanaian inter-African group run by a chap called Sam Bediako Asante. And he's actually joined the IMCSA, and he's going to join the council as well. So and I've trained over 150 consultants in Botswana as well, but they tend to wax hot and cold. With the Northwest University MOU, we could bring back in a number of Botswanan consultants as well. So we're trying to create an inter-African collaboration of trusted people. I must say that, because we have proven that anybody who gets a CMC is 99% certain to be trustworthy. The 1% we can never guarantee, but I've done work with people all over the world on a word, and I've been paid spot on, never a problem. Quality was perfect. It really is a good network of trusted advisors.
So I guess the process of professionalization of the profession will forever be a work in progress.
Absolutely. It'll depend very much on the culture in the country, the governmental support and the lobbying, and the individual's desire to be part of something better.
Mm.
Because I pushed very hard, and I started getting quite, as Sekha Lemetsi said, I've become quite a disciplinarian, because I'm getting sick and tired of doing work on my own and people not buying into it. So we had a very good AGM on Thursday, and we had quite a lot of commitment from you people, and very much commitment from the business rescue practitioners and from Northwest University. So we have quite a powerful group right now, and it looks like they're planning to do some work. I've just got to produce the minutes. So I've actually insisted that we make it serious, and we get the membership up, and we start getting the funding working, because I worked out it costs about 700,000 Rand a year to run this institute properly. It's not small money, and it's not as if we're putting it in our pockets, because we don't pay ourselves. So, I would encourage anybody to ask questions about what I've shown you now, because I've got another presentation. Then I'm going to go into the generics of what Sam asked me to look at. How's Africa doing, all those kind of things. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any. Maybe we'll, sorry, Sekha, did you want to speak?
No,
Yeah,
I'm holding back. I have a question in mind.
So go for it.
When we talk about professionalization of consulting businesses, because in my mind, I'm trying, what does it mean? Could it be that the government is not pro this, or actively trying to make it a regulated industry, because almost the next second person you need on the street is a consultant in the way. Others, they're ripping SMEs off. There's governments that some people just wake up today because there's a government tender, then I'm going to go consult on this project to what will it mean to existing companies?
Can I ask you to hold that question until the next presentation?
Okay.
Because I do answer that question. I've done the research for the Small Business Development Corporation, and of course they run CEDA, and I've done a lot of training and consulting for CEDA plus material development. And what I'm going to show you is an extract from my research, actual research. It's not pie in the sky and an opinion. So let me do that.
And if I could also say that question will apply to coaches as well. The same, everyone in the city is calling themselves a coach. Yeah.
I want to tell you what the problem is. Let me just make sure, because I'm not that familiar with this. Let me just go back here. Share screen. Share screen. Now, why have I only got? Let's just see if it's a window. All right. So let's just see here. I think it's this one here. All right. Can you see BAS discussion paper? Can you see the blue screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So this is a very summarized version of what took us months to come up with. And I think this is going to answer some of your questions. The background to this is that the Department of Small Business Development decided that they wanted to come up with a policy regarding people who are providing consulting and accelerator and incubator services, which they call BDS, Business Development Services. So the starting point was real confusion about terminology and what is a BAS, which is a business advisory service. And to answer Sam's question, BAS includes coaching, mentoring, financial services, consulting, all those things in different ways. And they were getting confused between the term business advisor, and that's why it's called business advisory services, and consulting, and so on. A management consultant, business consultant. So I did the research for them, and I showed them that they're all the same thing. And that's why I produced the competency framework, which showed them how you vary in the specialization, approach, and context, as opposed to the terminology and the naming. That was a big argument, I can tell you now. So what was the background? Exactly what was said earlier, and that is the need to improve the quality and professionalization, long identified by CEDA and other stakeholders, right? So all these people got together and they had, I'm telling you now, it started in 2011. We're 10 years down the line and we still don't have a policy. But this is how our government works. We have get-togethers and seminars and you name it. So that's the background. So we went into a working group and then we produced a paper, and my company actually finalized the paper for CEDA. And that was in early 2020, just before COVID. Right, so what was the purpose? Exactly what you said, the poor quality of the supply of services, in other words, consulting, coaching, financial advisory, etc., and to address the gap between supply and demand. And this is where your group can help quite a bit with inputs.
Could it also, Angelo, could it also be the purpose be to open up remove entry barriers for other people to enter the industry as well?
That's exactly that point at the bottom there, to create more jobs. So I will address that, but it's a good question, and it was one of the objectives. So it was to address the balance conflict. So the people who are coming in are obviously generally less experienced, and in their wisdom, CEDA and Services CETA have created an NQF level 4, which, as you know, is a very low level training program for advisors. And it's a bit scary because I said, from our professional body point of view, the only thing we can accept the graduates from that program in is as basically interns who have to be mentored and grown over a period of time to become what we call independently capable professionals. You cannot put someone with a standard 8 or standard 9 qualifications in the marketplace to advise people trying to start and run businesses. I think it could be quite scary. I think they took the point, but they're still pushing it. So yeah, they're trying to address it, but I don't think they always get it right. And I'll show you in the diagram just now. And of course, to aid economic growth, which is my passion. So what I didn't mention is that in conjunction with a friend of mine, John Francis, we have run 2 CEDA entrepreneurial development programs, and in both cases we had major successes. In the second case, we did a first, maybe even a world first, where we did a complete coaching program for 22 companies who were between small and micro, completely online under COVID, and we increased their turnover by 6.5 million rand as a group. It was a first because CEDA hadn't even thought about it. We helped the individuals who were attending with data costs because some of them were earning zero money. And if I had to give you one of the ladies, she was the stand-up lady at the celebration. She was flying at the end of it. So we are passionate about this part, passionate. Right, so I'm not going to go into detail here. We went through what was presented before. We had a whole lot of engagements, and then we produced a closeout report. So the key things that came out were what was said just now, were statutory and non-statutory. Now, people tend to think that SICA, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, is a statutory body. It's not. The only statutory body is IRBA. And the funny thing is, we did the research on the two as an input into this profession to see what would work and what would not. And IRBA only recognized at this point SICA members, despite all the other accounting bodies. So, even statutory regulation sometimes doesn't add too much to a well-run, self-regulated profession, which is voluntary. That's this part over here. Okay, so the other problem we had, definitions. Okay, people were talking about, as I said, advisor, consultant, business advisor, business consultant, coach, business coach, mentor, business mentor. And I can tell you that there was very little agreement as to what they meant. So I used international definitions, and I brought it down to there's only a consultant stroke advisor, and there's only a coach. And the coach can be broken down into business, life coaches, etc. And the mentors are people who generally, and by sort of 80% of consensus, are the people who provide their services for free and share their knowledge. So that was this slide over here will tell you where we had the fights. Terminology, the difference between a coach and a mentor, the size of the firm, which we put into the competency framework, and very much the size is very important in this discussion paper, because we're talking about small businesses for this purpose. The difference between a profession and a role, we have another professional body that brings you in and says you can be a coach, mentor, advisor, rescue practitioner, everything all in one. We say, no, sorry, you have to qualify in each of them separately, otherwise you've got a problem. Okay, and then here's the multiple roles and hats that I spoke about, is that a Sam Tsima can be a coach, can be a consultant, can be a mentor, but he's performing different roles at times. Right, so this is a bit hairy, and just to give you an idea of another good book, besides the ones that Sam mentioned, Flawless Consulting by Peter Block, B-L-O-C, is a very good reference book. It comes at a slightly different angle to Kuba. It comes more from the human interaction, contracting, trust, and so on. So, and there's a book called The Trusted Advisor as well. And what I mentioned there to strengthen my argument was that none of these documents actually talk about the definition of a consultant being defined by the size of the client. Just think about that for a bit. Okay, so you're a consultant regardless of whether you talk to a person who's a one-man business with a 50 Rand income, or whether you consult to an international company like IBM with billions and trillions of income. You're still a consultant. So that was the argument that we hope we won. And then we played around with this just to show you how many terms are floating around. It's just a visual. You don't have to worry about it. Then we compared the roles. And again, I took somebody else's input so that they wouldn't think I was trying to manipulate the definitions. So the difference between a mentor, consultant, counselor, and coach. And I said, I don't 100% agree with this, but the important thing is that there are differences between them in terms of the focus. And I showed them the competency framework, which we've done. This is important because the expert advisor, let's say a financial or tax consultant, is very much technical. And as you move to coaching, you become very much more interpersonal, interactive. And somewhere in the middle, you've got the consultant who transfers knowledge. Okay. So this is a very good diagram to understand the difference between a financial expert and, let's say, a life coach, to be on the extreme as opposed to a business coach. A business coach sits somewhere there. A consultant can sit anywhere between there. And then you get an expert consultant sitting there. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Very much
good.
so.
I like the diagram.
Yeah, it's a very good diagram. Earlier on, we spoke about specialist consultants and the generalist consultants. So I'll assume that specialist consultant will move much more to the left. These are the experts and technical, very technical type of consultants. And then when you talk about management and maybe generalists, will go towards the right, which I think for the buyers of the service, this is very, very important, that you don't get an expert consultant helping to bring in management skills or leadership skills, or management itself can be an expert in its own right?
Well, you see, the thing is that this is a continuum, and that's the nice thing about this diagram. You can be anywhere on this continuum depending on the role you're performing. And one day you could be this, and the next day you could be that, and the next day you could be that, if you are capable of wearing those hats. So, for example, if you are a change management consultant, you probably sit here. Unless you are a change management consultant specializing in the mining industry, then you start moving there.
Yeah.
Okay. If you are one day you're a tax advisor and you're consulting people on tax, you're sitting far to the left. But the next day, if you're talking about how to structure your business for mergers and acquisitions, you're starting to move to the right because you're starting to look at strategy and things like that. So just by the nature of your background, doesn't put you in a box. It actually puts you on a continuum. And the more you learn, the more you can change and move up and down this line.
So it's, Angelo, so you'll agree that it's not true that the consulting space is overcrowded. It's a question of people distinguishing themselves in the crowd.
It's a bit of both. The consulting space is overcrowded with incompetent consultants, and there's a shortage of people with real skills. And that is the gap that we have to fill. And that is the gap that the DSBD and CEDA have asked us to look at. And how do we build those people? And I'll give you my general opinion when we finished, if you remind me, because I've got it here. But it really is a combination of internship and mentoring and so on, which I'll get to. So now there's another thing here that I brought in.
Gerard, maybe just a quick one. So on the right-hand side, the depth. So the more knowledge you have of an industry, say you've been a farmer all your life, and then you move into coaching. And when you coaching farmers, you can sit on the right because you're able to ask the right questions without actually automatically going into the left-hand side because you're a farmer yourself.
Okay, so that's a brilliant question. So even though you have great technical depth, when you are coaching, you are actually applying the depth of coaching skills, not technical skills. So instead of telling people what to do, which is sitting here or there, you are applying questioning and engagement skills and conversational skills and motivational skills. Those are all the interpersonal skills that you learn as a coach. And you apply those to a far more depth than you do the technical skills. Okay, now you could draw this diagram as starting in that corner and ending in this corner, and I think that's not reality. There will be a time where you will slip up, or by desire and by the nature of who you are, you will provide advice to the client, but it'll be less of advice and more of building the client's ability to solve their own problems. Okay, so this is a fantastic diagram. I didn't build it.
So it is very much, I mean, I like the discussion you brought up, which says that you can't box these professionals and say you are this, you can't do this. What is more important for these professionals to have an awareness to say that when I'm applying coaching, I'm more interested in unlocking the capability of the client, and I'm intentional in terms of I'm not just going to volunteer the answers, because the outcome that I want out of that process is that the client must be capable to actually help himself, because the answers are sitting with them. But if I'm going to the left, I'm a consultant, I'm more concerned about bringing my knowledge to the benefit of my inside experience, to the benefit of the client.
Fantastic.
So,
yeah, that's perfect. So what I would also add, as you were talking, the let's call it the immediate and speedy outcome tends to favor the left.
Yes.
Sometimes it takes longer to get the result, but the ability of the individual to solve their own problem grows with time.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, spot on. I love the conversation because we are discussing about why there is no such thing as a dividing line between consulting and coaching. There is no dividing line. That I can state categorically. I'll probably have an argument with some purist, and I've had many, but that is my view. Okay, so moving on, because this is just the start. The next, and people, and I think one of the attendees asked this question. So, okay, so you climb in and you immediately a certified consultant. Not quite. What I've built in here is a concept of depth of knowledge. Now, we have seen in companies like Microsoft, as you move from technical expertise to management, you actually lose your technical expertise, believe it or not. Because it becomes the newcomers and the specialists who become, let's say, Microsoft Office specialists, and the manager becomes specialized in the people and the productivity issues. So they lose those technical capabilities over time. But the shift over time, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll explain now, is about where you want the depth to grow over time. And we use the word initial, independent, mastery, and industry leader. Initial means you're effectively an intern and being trained and you're learning. Independent means you can operate by yourself. And most of the people we're talking to today are at least at this level and able to hold their own with no managerial support. Mastery is one where you actually have become very good at this and you can actually manage the independence or even teach the independence. And the industry leader is the one the masters go to be educated and ask an opinion. Okay, so and that is for every single one of these blocks. Okay, so, and what actually happens is sometimes you can move backwards over time. Let's say, as I said, in the technical competence, because you have moved very much into the business competence. So you've become an industry leader in business competence and, let's say, managing a consulting firm, but you've lost the ability to solve technical problems. You give that to somebody else. You delegate it. And you get a little bit out of touch, but you still understand how to manage it. Does that make sense? Okay, moving on. So that was the competency depth, which I've actually spoken about. And it's very much related in firms, not individual consultancies, in the growth pathway. And that sort of answers the question we had about how do we build more capacity in this industry? And that is by developing growth pathways for generic, let's call it small business consultants, to be very specific. And of course, recognizing prior learning to make it easier for people. So now we get to education, training, and development. So here we talk about CPD, we talk about proper training, and the research we found is that most people actually prefer training like we're doing now. Let's not call it training, but sharing, learning informally, because you learn a lot faster than you do, assuming, of course, that you've already got a degree as an entry level anyway. So you've done your B degree, MBA, whatever it is. So now learning about this, the best way to learn is on the job and with a mentor and advisor, and also to do CPD informal programs to develop specific skills. So capacitation is what I just said. Formal training, informal, short courses. For example, in Accenture, we've seen that their structured process of teaching cuts the learning time to go from an intern to a fully competent consultant by half. And that's quite exciting. So everybody wants to join Accenture. Right, so then if we look at the service delivery standard, ISO 20700 is, I've got like 100 slides on this, but in essence, this focuses on the contracting, execution, and termination phases of an assignment and what is considered best practice in those 3 steps. And the one statement, and it more or less says it in only one place, it says a high quality assignment assumes that the advisor is competent. It's the only place where it talks about the competent individual. The rest is about process. And I'm not even going to go into this because it's too much. And then the business advisory ecosystem that I spoke about is very complex. This is about the individuals who do what we're talking about. And then you've got the whole CEDA, CIFA, certification, corporate social investment, ESD. It's an ecosystem, a massive ecosystem. And if it doesn't work together, people get all excited when they get trained, and then suddenly they run into a roadblock getting money. And that's what we raised here as well. We said this ecosystem has to work together. And this is what incubators who are connected to funders are trying to do properly. I don't know if they are yet. And that's called BDS, Business Development Services. Right, so this is what I wanted to get to. So we spoke about regulation, and the current preference for small business advisory under DSBD is that we don't regulate, but we have a high standard of professionalization. And this is where SACWA has an input. In the IMC, we have the ICMCI, which is the international input. And this is talking about the individual as a professional. Down here, we're talking about the training required, including CPD. And over here, we're talking about ISO 20700. And what people have been battling to understand is the difference between the professionalization of the individual versus professional delivery of an assignment to get results. They go hand in hand, but this is what 20700 focuses on. And I think I'm going to stop here because it's quite a lot to swallow. And then we'll go into the questions, and we can, let me just get rid of this. Right, so you can see me now. And even though I've spent my hour, we've also had discussions in between, and I said I'd be happy to carry on. And I do have a couple more questions that you asked me, but go ahead and ask questions.
Let me start with this one around mentoring. Take me through mentoring as you see it as your institute. Do you work with mentors? Do you help people mentor? How do you see the state of mentoring right now?
Okay. So this is a very interesting and very controversial question. Because just to mention SAICA, I asked the question at SAICA, and I said, do you guys believe mentors should be paid? And they said, absolutely not. Okay. Then there's the South African Institute of Mentors. They said the same thing. They said mentors don't get paid. And then you've got an organization called IMCSA, Institute of Business Advisors, who call themselves business mentors who do get paid. So there's a conundrum. And in my view, we shouldn't be using the term business mentors as a paid individual. I would like to separate the free mentors who are experienced people who've succeeded in life, who are offering their services for free, mentoring other people, and they can only mentor so many people due to capacity, versus the people who are providing advice, coaching, consulting, etc., to people for a fee, which is effectively business mentoring. Okay, so that's how I see it. And I don't use the word business mentoring because I think it's confusing. I use the word coach consulting. And all our senior people in our institute have bought into that thinking.
I think it's a very good debate because you see more and more professional bodies like coaching federations bringing mentoring into it. However, us as coaches, we get mentored when you want to achieve a certain level. But basically, it's advisory services, or you are being assisted on your journey.
Is it charged? Is the question. Your mentor coach, is that person charging, or are they doing it out of their goodwill?
Yeah, you pay for it. You pay for it. They basically help you to go through that process of credentialing because it's their time. They charge you for their time, and I think terminologies are creating a lot of confusion. That's why I think let's say, for instance, we have if you take entrepreneurship today, the word entrepreneurship coaching, it's not that much famous as mentoring entrepreneurs.
Yes.
So again, that is we won't solve it, but it is definitely. And I like these controversies because they make us think very creatively when we engage with consultants. Because with the clients, it's the clients that suffer because you don't create them clarity, and it's the market that actually gets to suffer, because if you are full-time in doing this work and it's your source of income, those who are not full-time, who are paid salaries, will expect you to walk into their company and offer free mentoring, because they encourage their staff to find the external mentor so that they can actually have a better insight and better perspective and deliver to this company that actually makes money out of their
exactly the dilemma. That's exactly the dilemma. So just to go back to the example of the mentor coach. So basically that person is more experienced than you are and transferring their life experience and knowledge to you. And it could be done for free or for a fee. But basically that person is being a super coach, effectively.
Yes, it's a super coach.
In that case. But when you talk about the free mentoring for an SMME to help them improve their performance, I don't know how many people have asked me to do it. And I say to them, and I just had an interaction now while we were talking. I've got someone who's asking me to mentor some SMMEs for free. I said, I can offer you 1 hour and I'll do it for free, but I cannot offer it as a service continuously because I've got to make a living and run the institute, which I sponsor. So I have other responsibilities. So unless I'm a multi-millionaire, offering free mentoring is not exactly an easy thing to do for most people. So, and unfortunately, we've led people to believe you just ask someone to mentor you and it's no problem for them. They just talk. But actually, it's
exactly. That's a problem. Sorry, just my last input, and then George will come in. I like what the incubators have now recognized, that when you get people to volunteer their mentoring to these entrepreneurs, they're not committed to it. And so they're not bound by any outcome. But when you make it part of the incubation services and you pay the mentor, because then the mentors, you select them, they're not just anybody. And they commit to a deliverable. You want to assist this entrepreneur in their journey, because in 3 years' time, this person must graduate from incubator. Otherwise, he sits there and then is hawking the space. And then you can't, because they make business also out of the people occupying the incubator space. And that for me is the model that is very productive. But when you get this mentoring that is requested for this company to employ 5,000 people, you have internal mentor, they pay this internal mentor salary already, you are paid so to develop other people, it's okay.
Yeah,
but
so
then they say, but then for productivity, go to the outside, get somebody and expect them to get that for free. Somebody will volunteer, but that person is not accountable. It's not really going to go all out.
In my opinion, that's a cheek. I want to let George speak, but I just want to give you an example. Accenture does it right. In Accenture, your mentor is inside Accenture. So that is a paid staff member who is senior. Yes. You both choose each other. They can reject you, but you choose your mentor, and that mentor guides you through your career. So that is a paid staff member doing that. Now, you ask yourself, before George comes in, I know George wants to talk. There's just 2 things I asked him. I had the Institute of Mentors of South African Mentors, the free mentors, and COMETSA. I had conversations with him. I said, right, so what is the competency framework of a mentor? And neither of them could answer it. In fact, the Institute of Mentors came back to me and said, do you have a competency framework? I said, no. The competency framework is I have life experience in the area that you want to learn about. That's the competence. George, back to you.
Well, where I'm coming from is, so if it is, last week, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Me and my wife had an anniversary. I didn't attend the LEKGOTLA because it's a special weekend for me. We've been married 36 years. So we celebrated that weekend. Now, if someone comes to me and says, please mentor us, our marriage relationship, I will do that gladly because I want marriages to survive. I want marriages to go. I've walked a road that I can share. But if it is a business person, the first consideration for me is to get the people into a business mindset. And a business mindset says you pay for services.
Yeah.
When you pay for services, You understand the framework. So when you eventually become very successful as a businessman and you are now Bill Gates, you can take your earnings and go into the communities and help as part of your contribution. But the lesson you must learn as a businessman is that you are not going to be given things for free. Because once you have a mindset like that as a small business growing up, you're actually going to have struggles. Understand that everything you pay for. And this is where, when I talk mentorship, it's not so much the amount that you're going to be charging this businessman. It might be a small amount.
It's the attitude.
It's getting a mindset in that says, listen, I'm in business. So I'm going to pay rent, I'm going to do this, I'm going to pay for fuel, everything you pay for as a businessman. So it's not the amount. So people say, oh, but you ask to pay. It could be a small amount. I could charge 500 Rand or 300 Rand, but that's not the point. The point is to get a sight in. So that's where I'm coming from. That from your side, how do you look at mentoring? I can help the marriages. That I'll do for free because that's God's gift to me. But I want you to become a businessman.
The point is that I've also mentored a lot of people, and by running the institute, I mentor other people into what I'm doing. I do a lot of free talks. I've done it for New Zealand, Kenya, Uganda. That's mentoring. You could call it training, but it's not. I'm mentoring other consultants. So I do it within reason, because at the end of the day, I've still got to run the institute for free. I've got to run a business where I've got to make money, and I've got to run my family, which is a very important time. And lately I've been running into serious time problems. And as I was saying,